Welcome to the fourth and final of our Arts Dinners online for 2020. My name is Bronwyn Davies and I'm the Coordinator of Cultural Services for Scenic Regional Council. I'm here on Wandjirabara country, here at the Vonda Youngman Community Centre, Tamborine Mountain, and my co-host is Michelle Blair, coming to you from Toowoomba in southwestern Queensland. Thank you for joining us. But first, may I introduce you with great pleasure to Mununjali Elder, Aunty Gerry Page, coming from Beaudesert. Good evening, Aunty Gerry.
Good evening, Roman. Good evening to everyone, and this is our last art show for 2020, is it? And I would just like to say on behalf of the traditional Mununjali elders, what it is a pleasure and what an honour it is for us to do the welcome, myself and Aunty Janice. I would love all the other elders to be involved, but unfortunately we're the only one with the with Wi-Fi and can zoom in. But before I finish, I would like to say Minigu, Jingari Wala Mununjali Jargon, and good evening, and welcome to Mununjali country. So that we are gathered here this evening on this beautiful land. We respectfully acknowledge elders that have gone before us for the passing on of their dreaming and their spiritual connection to country, of their values and their beliefs and their knowledge, and the sharing of, and the sharing of the love and the care of each other, and how they taught us to be generous and in giving, sharing the food, honey for food, and all the skills and the tools that they had to work with. Very little, but they worked with those the tools that they had, and the song and the dance and the stories, because without that we wouldn't be here having these wonderful arts dinner and sharing all our stories with us all. And also acknowledge our elders for the present, and continue on the dreaming and making tracks and connecting the stories, connecting the song, connecting the knowledge, and keeping our dream alive. And to hand on to our emerging elders, because we have to hand stuff down and we need to go forward. It's 2020 and we just need to keep that dream going, and our cultural, spiritual thing about our song and our dance and our art. We have beautiful artists we have beautiful artists out there. We have, this is just getting a little bit away from tonight, but my brother, Stephen Page, is artistic director for Mangara, and they've been all over the world. They haven't been to Beaudesert yet, but we're working on that. And all the stuff, all the storytelling and tribute to my brother who's passed, David Page, for all the music that he produced and all the songs that he written, and that handed that on, and that has been handed on. And I also would like to thank everybody that has been involved with the last 4 arts dinners, that have done the cooking, the art, the talking, and especially for you, Bronwyn, for organising everything. You're such a beautiful soul and we love you. And also to Elliot and Tim, thank you so much for the IT guys. They've been amazing. And to all the other artists and all the other people that have come on board. And Rory, welcome you tonight, Rory O'Connor, and from the Mununjali elders. And also I want to thank you for the kind invitation from the traditional Mununjali elders. We're always so ready to come on board and do welcomes for the Scenic Rim or for whatever it is, but especially for our people to keep the dream going. And it's always a proud custom to share, and it's also uplifting to our Mununjali people to be acknowledged. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aunty Gerry. It's really an honour to have you welcome us into this space, and it's the right way, the proper way of doing things. And another thing that we really feel very significant and important for us is to use local artists, and we're very delighted
Yes.
to welcome Mununjali Ngari tonight. And earlier we were out at Bromelton and we recorded, because it's a bit dark out there at the moment.
Absolutely.
So Mark was out there with Mununjali Ngari earlier at Bromelton. So let's go to the video footage of him. Thanks, Aunty Gerry.
Thank you. Eddie, come and see these boys dance quickly. Quick, Ed, come.
Thank you. It's a real shout out to Mununjali Ngari. It's a real collection of fantastic emerging artists and performers from Beaudesert, and really thank you for sharing your country with us, and especially out at Bromelton against that big scar tree. It's quite lovely. Another sort of feature of the arts dinners has been sharing, because we can't share food with you, so we've tried to share some insights into the Scenic Rim's one of favourite event, which is Eat Local Week. So we've had various chefs and different producers, and today we went out to the Towri Sheep Cheese farm, Towri Farm. Anyway, we'll cut to a bit of a video to look at some of our fantastic producers.
Hi, I'm Jenna from the Cultural Services team, and I'm out here today on location at Towri Sheep Cheeses with the lovely ladies of Towri Farm, Dallas and Carolyn Davidson. So ladies, what do we have here and what makes sheep cheese so special?
Well, there's actually more sheep cheese in the world than cow cheese.
Really?
Yes. So, but just not in the Asia Pacific. So it's quite rare here in Australia, but it's getting more common. Okay.
It's still catching on.
It is catching on. It's very good for us. Sheep cheese has 3 times the protein of cow's milk, has up to 2.5 times the calcium, so it's really good for our bones, and it's also really high in short-chain fatty acids, so which it makes it a very healthy cheese. So first of all, we've got our yoghurt, which is a drained yoghurt with our garden fresh rosemary, local olive oil, and a little bit of garlic and some more dried rosemary. Then we have our saltbush, which is a white mould French style cheese, and we have inside, scattered around in there, some of our very own saltbush. Saltbush is very high in demand at the moment for all chefs, and they're using it in all kinds of meat, but especially lamb, for cooking, for roasting. Then we have our blue cheese, which is a very mild blue cheese, and today I'm going to serve it with some dried apricots and prunes. Then we have our feta, which is our bar jar. This one is about 1.5 months old. It has some thyme and again local olive oil. Then we have our pecorino, which we will serve today as our lavender cheese, and we'll have some local lavender honey and our own lavender. Then we'll have some of the meats that are available in the Scenic Rim. This particular one comes from Heights Butcher in Beaudesert, but there's lots of them around. We're very lucky with our charcuterie that we've got a great selection. Then we have our local relishes. This particular one's made from DJ's at Calbar, and this is my favourite. It's a tomato jam. I love anything that's got a little sweet note that goes with cheeses very well. Then we have our pickled eggs. These are from Jewel's Yummies and are available at the Big Pumpkin. They're fantastic. Anyone who hasn't had pickled eggs is missing out on something. We also have our cultured butter from the Jersey girls from the Tomarups Dairy. And again, a few more from this one. Here's a raw honey from Nectar Collector, which is from Beaudesert, and again, a local honey. So I hope you'll enjoy those, Jenna.
It looks delicious. So, ladies, what is unique about Towri Farm and what can visitors experience when they visit?
Okay, so Towri is very unique. On arrival, you basically feel like you're in an oasis in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful French gardens right next to a sheep dairy. It's very unusual and it's very special in its own right. It's beautiful. We're very, very lucky. It's quite unique because when you get here, you watch a milking demonstration and you get to see the girls being milked and do their business and what they're good at and what they love. And then you have a cheese tasting, which is great. And you can also buy some local produce that we have here as well, even right down to coffee. So we also have Mount Tambourine Coffee Plantation here as well for sale. And then you can cuddle some lambs and wander through our gardens.
Yeah. Awesome. So you do the farm tours. You also have events out here. I've come to a couple of them and they're lots of fun. We also have cheese making classes, and soon you'll be opening up accommodation, which I'm sure is going to be a really exciting stage in the farm. So what attracts your visitors to the Scenic Rim and what experiences are they looking for while they are out here?
Look, the Scenic Rim has everything, right from camel rides to sheep cheese to wineries to rock climbing, you name it, the Scenic Rim has it all. And it's only 15 minutes from Brisbane, which people don't realise. It's just on their doorstep.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially now, the times we're in, people are getting out and they're seeing it, which is great, and great for us farmers.
Yep, fantastic. Yeah. That's what I love. I find it so convenient living out here because you're convenient to the cities and the places like that, but you're also far enough away to feel away from it all. And you don't have to drive hours and hours to experience such a beautiful region and all the fantastic things that we have to offer. Yeah. It's amazing. I love it. So this platter looks amazing. So people can purchase your products here at the farm if they come out to one of the tours. Also online, I believe we can purchase them from your website.
Absolutely.
And they're also available through the Scenic Rim Farm Box, which recently started up, which is fantastic.
It's been amazing.
Yep, awesome. So, ladies, I'm going to tuck into this cheese, so it's back to Bron and Michelle.
Thank you, Jenna and Dallas out at Towri Farm. I think this growing trend towards agri-tourism is a good segue into a discussion on cultural tourism. If you've just tuned in tonight, welcome to the Arts Dinners online. We're streaming to you tonight from Zoom and YouTube live. You can post questions throughout the night, and the team at Arts Front, who are behind the scenes making this happen, will get that to us to make sure that we ask our guests tonight some of the questions. Arts Front and their team are working on this project with us from locations around southern Queensland and with everyone in self-isolation and observing physical distancing guidelines. If you want to catch this again later or share with your friends or community, go to YouTube Live, which you can find at the Live at the Centre website, which is www.liveatthecentre.com.au. But right now, we're going to cross to my co-host, Michelle Blair, at the Empire Theatre in Toowoomba. Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening, Bron. Welcome, everybody. I'd also just like to take a moment and acknowledge the traditional owners whose song lines traverse the land we are on today, and to pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So tonight's panel discussion dives deep into cultural tourism now. After a terrible spring and summer of bushfires, drought and floods, we are still in the grip of COVID-19. So where does that leave us and cultural tourism going forward? To help answer that, I'd like to introduce our guests tonight. First, we have Jonathan Fisher. Jonathan is the former CEO of the National Trust of Australia, of Queensland and Currumbin Sanctuary, and has worked in the non-profit organisation management industry. Jonathan is currently the CEO of Binnaburra Lodge. We have Susan Rawlings joining us down at Tambourine tonight as well. Susan is a director, a business strategist, financial coach, mentor and philanthropist. Susan is a founder and director of the Making Good Alliance. She is also a past regional director for UK and Europe for Tourism Queensland. Rory O'Connor is the CEO of Yugambeh Museum Language and Heritage Research Centre. As a South East Queensland traditional custodian, author and presenter, this former journalist is the driving force behind many positive initiatives keeping Yugambeh heritage alive in the South East region. We have Melissa Robertson up in Cairns. Melissa is a program manager for Arts Nexus in Cairns. She has 20 years experience working with festivals and community events. She sees culture and community cultural development as an important element in visitors to any region, and has recently been involved with developing Eco Arts Authentic Experiences strategy for Far North Queensland. That's a mouthful. We've also got Scott McDuff. He's the principal specialist events at Scenic Rim Regional Council. Scott is an experienced event producer, working production, event and volunteer management, sponsorship and social media outreach. And last but not least, we have Cherie Bald, and she is the project officer in cultural tourism for Queensland Art Gallery and the Gallery of Modern Art. Cherie has a background in international tourism and business, delivering innovative, pragmatic, context-specific, demand-driven solutions across private sector, government, non-government, bilateral and multilateral organisations. So thank you everybody for agreeing to be part of tonight's panel. First off, I'd like to introduce Cherie and start the conversation off with Cherie. What do you see is cultural tourism?
I'm Michelle, and thanks very much for the introduction. And I suppose I'll just start with that. And thanks for inviting me to these arts dinners online. For me, working in tourism for the last 20 odd years, I've worked across a diverse number of sectors. And when we're talking about cultural tourism, I find cultural tourism to be, in terms of a definition, really as diverse as culture itself. And I think that more and more we're all realising that culture isn't a stagnant thing. It's something that is continuously evolving. And over the decades, I've seen the same thing happen in the tourism industry, where those traditional realms of cultural tourism, such as heritage buildings, architecture, possibly festivals, those kinds of things, art, are really sort of, there are other sort of niches that are really taking form now and are really becoming mainstream now. Things such as gastronomy and culinary parts for tourism. There's handicrafts, obviously First Nations, things like cinema and religion, pilgrimages. So these niches have been emerging over time, and they're really dependent, from my experience, they really have been dependent on the demand, and really the demand has come from tourists who are really trying to seek more authentic and more sort of in-depth experiences that they can take, not only take home, but to live and stay with them for many years afterwards. So while it's constantly changing, it does incorporate these new forms, but it really consists of these tangible aspects. So as I said, art, cinema, literature and music and festivals, but it also incorporates those intangible aspects. So the intellectual and the spiritual and the emotional benefits that you get from experiencing cultural tourism. And there was some research done in the early 2000s where they tried to really look at who was a cultural tourist, because quite often when you're a marketer and you're trying to segment the market and try to figure out who are we really trying to target, this typology sort of became a bit of a benchmark for all of us to look at. And it really came up with these 5 different aspects of what a cultural tourist is. And it sort of went on this axis, which looked at the types of experiences that tourists were looking for. So they went from a shallow experience to a deep experience. But then they were also looking at the importance that tourists placed on seeking and experiencing cultural tourism, and that went from low importance to high importance. And it was quite interesting because, and you see it the more you work in the industry, where you may book a holiday and you have a specific idea in mind that you may want to go and experience something that's cultural, and you may want to have a deep experience, but it's of low importance to you. So, or you may go somewhere and not really expect to get any kind of experience out of it, and you end up coming away from that and feeling like, wow, I really didn't think I would get that. And so it's along this sort of spectrum or this typology that really helps to differentiate who tourists are in that respect.
So this brings me to, so you're currently working with Quagoma
Yes.
on a cultural tourism strategy.
Yes.
So what does that involve, and how are you going about it, and how is this promoted and to whom? So who's your target market, I suppose?
Sure. What does it involve? A lot of work, and a lot of research, and that was really that's always been the base from where I start in all of the work that I do, is to find out who is coming and what are they seeking, what are they looking for, and do we need to sort of deepen that experience for them, or are they okay with that? And so Quagoma is embarking on, I suppose they have an internal tourism strategy that they work on, but they were sort of looking to really expand on that and to try to capture more of that tourism market, because the research that's been coming out for quite a long time is that there's a lot of value in cultural tourists. They spend more, they stay longer, and that emotional connection that they have with the destination or with the experience is something that contributes to that lifelong learning and usually that repeat visitation. And it's that repeat visitation where destinations really benefit from things like that. So they really wanted to get a lot more out of that. And so it really came down to looking at the market, deciding who was really the key target markets for Quagoma. And interestingly, this was a really difficult exercise. You wouldn't not necessarily think so, but even though tourism is recognised as being quite a significant sector of the industry, there's very little research that's done on it. And so it's very, very difficult to make assumptions with things like that. So you try your best and to look at where you think you can sort of get the most impact. The strategy hasn't been released yet, so there's only so much I can talk about it. But certainly they're looking to develop much more unique engaging and memorable experiences, incorporating, you know, the whole of the tourism industry, and ensuring that, you know, that cultural tourism doesn't just sit as a silo, but that it actually interacts with the rest of the industry, which is really key to its success in any way, shape or form, really. Yeah.
Make sure that all stakeholders are at the table, basically, to move forward.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously in your career, you've come across a lot of great examples of cultural tourism. Can you describe the best and why they were the best?
Yeah. So I suppose as maybe as a start of a more generic answer to that, for me, great examples of cultural tourism are those that incorporate the learning and the appreciation, the understanding and the knowledge about culture. And for me, authenticity really sits at the core of what a cultural tourism product or an experience really represents. And this is not so much from a tourism perspective, because you know, there's all kinds of tourists, and you know, for what we may think is an inauthentic experience, others may perceive to be quite authentic, and so that authenticity really you should try to make cultural tourism, your cultural tourism experience or your product authentic. It's not only from a tourist perspective, but it's a position of respect in attempting to sort of really capture that essence of something that's really as complex as culture, and really presenting it in a way that's respectful and responsible, really. So I actually wanted to talk briefly about an example. It's actually something that I did quite a while ago in Cambodia, and I was working as a consultant for the Asian Development Bank, and I was responsible for developing their national tourist handicraft brand. And what that really involved was the issue was that the tourist handicraft market in Cambodia was flooded with cheap imports from China, as well as Vietnam and Thailand. And as a tourist walking into the market, you would, even though Cambodia may be written on products and things like that, none of it was made in Cambodia. And it really was, the sellers were trying to sell these things as Cambodian, anything from silk to woodwork to silverware and things like this. And so it was really a bit of a multi-pronged approach in trying to create a handicraft industry that was going to actually benefit the local people, because those kinds of handicrafts are usually those, and particularly the things that tourists buy, they're usually those kinds of things that they're a day-to-day or an everyday sort of part of the household, and they may see it as quite unique that we would like. They use it every day that we think is a great souvenir, and so it was really about that whole sort of poverty alleviation aspect through trying to gain more employment through developing handicrafts, but also trying to create an industry around a brand that would then signify what Cambodian handicrafts were. Because at that point, because there was very little that was made in Cambodia, and the things that were made in Cambodia were so overrun by all of the imports that it was hard for tourists to discern what was and what wasn't Cambodian. And the sellers themselves, they didn't care as long as they sold it. And so it was building within the sellers, even it was building that pride within them that, you know, you should not say that it's Cambodian when it isn't, because that then, you know, lessens the experience. And I suppose it comes back to what I was saying before when we talk about authenticity. It's more about respecting the culture and providing or demonstrating or selling, providing something that is responsible and respectful to that, rather than whether the tourist necessarily perceives it to be authentic. And so step by step through many iterations, we were able to release the national brand, and through that included training for local people. So of course Cambodia went through a civil war, and a lot of those skills were lost. So it was trying to find weavers and people that knew how to dye silk properly, and all of these things, and basically bringing the aunties and the grandmas to the table, and teaching the younger generation how to do this, and then working with the suppliers, working with, for example, hotels in the industry that were looking to maybe put something on their beds or on the bedside table, and teaching them how they can promote that and on-sell that to their guests. So trying to sort of provide that throughout that whole tourist experience. But again, coming back to that brand, which really is to signify what is Cambodian and what is Cambodian about these handicrafts. So that was my one of my more fun experiences. They're all fun.
Yep. And that's just such a multi-pronged, so many stakeholders involved, so many people to bring on board for the journey as well. Did you get any feedback? Were you able to get any feedback then from the tourists, who then were able to appreciate the authentic product, or the hotel owners that were actually utilising the products? Did you have any feedback from them?
The hotel owners, yes. I wasn't, I had left. I had been in Cambodia for 10 years and I had then left. So they didn't, the project didn't carry through with the market research from the tourist side, but certainly we followed up with the hotels, and so they, particularly those hotels that would have like a gift shop, so they would replace everything that was in there with Cambodian objects, handicrafts. Their staff were trained in how to identify the provinces, because each province was unique in the different kinds of handicrafts that were very specific to them. And so being able to tell that story as well, so that it wasn't buying a product off the shelf, but it was more of that experienced kind of thing, and as well as you know, advertising that throughout the hotels as well. So we got really good feedback from them, and the hotels were really appreciative, because they also found that that was their point of difference in their marketing aspects as well. So they could sort of distinguish and diversify themselves from other hotels, because particularly in places like Siem Reap, at Angkor Wat, where the competition for rooms is incredibly competitive, cutthroat. So it was a way for them to sort of differentiate themselves in the markets as well.
Yep. I reckon I could even just talk to you for hours on end, Gerry. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. Hang around, and I'm sure we'll have more questions later as well. So next up, we've got Scott McDuff. Now, Scott, welcome. How are you this evening? You're muted still.
Okay, sorry about that, Michelle.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Welcome.
Thank you.
So if events add to the cultural vibrancy and identity of a place, how do you ensure they are authentic and connected to the place that they are held?
Yes, very good question. Look, I believe live events and festivals deliver authentic interactions with brands. When I say a brand could be a region. A brand could be a theme. It could be music or sculpture or performance art. But those brands and the interactions that resonate to help build a personal and community relationships, creating a genuine human connection is focusing on a person's experience, and I think that's a key word when it comes to events, experience, where an event will reinforce authenticity, and the person will be in an environment that enhances being together. In other words, that people are alongside each other, interacting and experiencing whatever is happening, whether it be on stage or all around them. I think in some cases, authentic events can be celebrating and showcasing local culture, history and environment. For example, Quandamooka Festival on North Stradbroke Island and Moreton Bay Islands. Cooley Rocks On in Coolangatta is showcasing some history of what was going on in Coolangatta and Tweed Heads. Narooma Oyster Festival in New South Wales is about the produce and an authentic experience with the seafood that they're producing. Beef Australia and Rockhampton. In other cases, events can be connected with a locality or region through the need to build that brand for strategic reasons. It could be economic return, it could be to boost tourism, could be for business activation, even population growth. Some examples, Parks Elvis Festival. I'm sure Elvis never went to Parks and probably never heard of Parks before in his life, but there's one example. Chinchilla Melon Festival. For those who don't know, there are very few watermelons grown in Chinchilla. They're coming from other regions, but they're still celebrating a Chinchilla Melon Festival. Mount Isa Rodeo. Mount Isa, of course, is known for mining, not necessarily for bull riding. Woodford Folk Festival. Again, folk music is worldwide, not just necessarily known in Woodford. And a really good example of a boutique and very successful event is Dark Mofo in Hobart. I think these events are conceived with no connectivity, but they're certainly there and building that brand. An example of what I have done recently was build a brand known as Big Skies in Western Downs for that region. And that was, I suppose, combining both an authentic event with building authenticity around the location, which was Jimbaugh, close to Dalby and Jimbaugh House, and the big skies that occur out there, the authentic experience of camping and being under the stars, plus, let's say, clashing that with some rock stars, some of Australia's finest rock talent in a concert, and food that was both local and brought in market stalls. So we're sort of combining that to build a brand new event was a way of combining that. But I think in every case, that authenticity must hinge on a strong linkage to regional offerings, whether that be food or scenery, food or drink. It's got to showcase the community that where it's held. That may be through local performers, again, maybe through market stalls and retail stalls selling that produce, maybe through local guides providing information to tourists. But it's all about the unique local experience. There's got to be a strong connection to the locality for a visitor to enjoy that. It's got to build on the region's history. There's community pride in the event. That to me is very important in conceiving and delivering new events. And there's got to be community buy-in, whether that be locals wanting to volunteer, promote the event, promote the region, and really join the visitors in the event activities. So I think that's very important.
So considering we've been through a lot the last 6 months, so we've had fire, floods, drought, and of course, obviously, COVID. What do you see the impact of all of that is on events for regional communities?
Yeah, and especially, I'll talk from Scenic Rim's point of view for now. It's been, of course, one of those natural disasters after another, although, of course, I'm not really including COVID-19. From my perspective, I'm not including that in a natural disaster. I think that's a very different aspect. But I think the message has got to be for return visitation to our region, for events, for festivals, that it's got to be that wherever that natural disaster may be, for example, I'll use Narooma again, that they are open for business. Bateman's Bay is open for business. Scenic Rim is open for business. We are encouraging visitors, and we're encouraging that visitor spend from outside our region, and come and enjoy what we have to offer. But we're also, I think we've got to push the message that we're offering an exclusive experience like no other, whether it be food, drink, scenery, our unique accommodation offerings, ease of access, location and proximity to a major centre, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Northern New South Wales, if I'm talking Scenic Rim. But in some cases, if I use Big Skies as an example, and Western Downs, it's the distance from the major centre that may be attractive to get away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. I think the COVID impact is something very, very different with the man-made pandemic. I think the events are never going to be the same again. I really do honestly believe that. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on the event manager, the event owner, the on-site operations delivering that event. I don't think we're ever going to get away from changes, whether it be to not just social distancing, that may be long-term. I certainly don't think it's short-term, but also ticketing for any form of contact tracing that may be required, exclusion zones, excess medical. I can see nearly every event, whether it be community or a major festival or a signature event, will need to be fenced and control entry and exit. Public transport and how people travel to that event, I think it's going to be much more reliance on actually driving to the event. Filling a coach with 60 people, I think, is maybe something in the past to get people to an event. But I think there is certainly a hunger from the public to get back out there, certainly for travel, certainly for events and festivals. And more than that is to celebrate when we can finally come out of any form of restrictions. I think that's one big point for our community, whether it be Australia-wide or worldwide, they want to be celebrating. For event organisers, I think there's going to be some quite major changes for them as well. But yeah, that's that's a minefield all on its own.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, there's a lot to consider to start with, and then you're throwing in all this another layer of context is going to be a challenge for them. And I mean, I think even in my daily life too, we don't know what's coming around the corner as well. We're sort of planning for the unknown, which is making it very difficult. And from an events perspective, that's even trickier. So obviously you're busy now though. So what are you currently, well, I hope you are. What are you working on at the moment for the Scenic?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I've spent most of recent time, and I'll call it wading through the industry framework for events, and it's quite scary what is required for a new event. But I suppose I'm working on a 5-year festival event strategy for Scenic Rim. I'm really hoping to bring 2 new hallmark signature destination-driven events to the region. And I suppose that on the back of that strategy, they've got to complement our hallmark event being Eat Local Week, and that's going to be in its 10th year next year, which is very exciting. One of the reasons I was so wanting to be part of Scenic Rim region was for Eat Local Week and the success of that event. I really wanted to be part of that. So I'm looking forward to finally getting to deliver that event. I'm hoping in 2021. I have some other events. Now, what I might try to do, Michelle, is try to share this screen. And I did try it before, but I'll try this again just to give you some ideas of what we're looking at. And I hope you can see that. You see that now?
Big sky.
Yeah, we can see what was on screen. So I just want to check that everyone can see what we're looking at. So what I'm looking at now, there's an example. That's actually Opera at Jimbo, which is at the same location that Big Skies was. So what we're looking at is a new event in 2021 in partnership with Queensland Music Festival, which is going to be called Popra in the Paddock at Hazelwood Estate in Beechmont. It will look something similar to what you're seeing there. You can see in this image, there's Jimbo House in the background. So we've got a great backdrop. The backdrop at Beechmont will be somewhat as spectacular with the Gold Coast over our shoulders as we're looking at a stage. But that's going to be a fantastic ticketed event at Beechmont for up to 5,000 people. Of course, socially distanced at this point. Yeah, it will be anything from pop to opera, hence the name Popra, with a professional orchestra on stage and rhythm section and some very special guests that I can't really name as yet. So we're talking mid to late April for that event. There's some other images of opera at Jimbo. You can see, very popular event. And this was a destination event where we would get a lot of commuters out to Western Downs from Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Northern New South Wales. And of course, what we offered at Popra is camping and people enjoying happy hour there. So it was a very, very successful event. We are planning on a bit of a fireworks spectacular at the end of that event. You can see the fireworks at the end of Big Skies. So that is the plan for next year. I'm also looking at some other options. You can see an image there of Cooley Rocks On. I delivered that event in 2017. And hoping to look at building on some of our already successful events in Scenic Rim. We've got some great opportunities with an event called Carralbin out at Carralbin, which is something we could build to something similar to Cooley Rocks On. And our Clydesdale Spectacular in Boona, which is a great boutique event, brings a lot of people to Boona. Also looking at the possibility of combining some events on Tambourine Mountain, whether that be Scarecrow Festival, Springtime on the Mountain and Botanic Gardens events, and really looking at an all-mountain festival to get everybody to work together. That is the plan. And also looking at the camping and caravan community and the possibility of bringing one of their shows to the Scenic Rim region. They're always very, very popular, although that image doesn't help. There's not many people in that image, but usually they're very, very popular.
Caravans anyway.
I did bring one of those shows to Cleveland when I was working with Redland City Council. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at, and I'll probably jump to the front to most recently looking at a pop-up driving experience to really hopefully get our community back out and celebrating everything that's wonderful in Scenic Rim. We're looking at doing that, and the plans are for September, October, November for a few pop-up drive-ins in our region, which will really make sure that, again, showing the best of what community has to offer and involving our community groups for the community and by the community. So that's the plan at the moment.
Sounds like you're going to be very busy.
Always.
Always. Best way to be, I think, sometimes. Thanks very much. We are now going to head up to Cairns. Melissa, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am, Michelle. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, well, thank
you for being here tonight.
Sure.
So Scott has talked a lot about that authenticity. So how do you create or plan for authentic cultural tourism activities?
Look, and first of all, thank you, Aunty Gerry, for the beautiful welcome, and Bronwyn for the invite. And of course, I'd like to just acknowledge that I'm sitting here on tableland Gidinji country, which is very beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, so very lucky. So yeah, look, interesting that you point out the very complicated name, and we did come to that. It did start as a cultural tourism strategy, and it is only a working title because the funky name comes a bit later when we get to the website. But basically, it started very organically, this process, and it came out of a discussion about what is cultural tourism. I was sitting with two other colleagues from the Wet Tropics Management Authority. They have a lot of the tour guide training. They work with the rangers on country. And I also was working with the Queensland Water and Land Carers Network, which is all of the volunteers, 30,000 around Queensland. And we realised that in the middle of all of these three networks, they all ran on the same passion. You can't take an artist out of the studio without their soul shriveling. And the same is with people that work on country. You cannot take them out of the country or off land or off countries, their traditional land, without it having an effect. So we came from the perspective of acknowledging the gap that is actually in the tourism visitor experience. And I think from that, we started to see the desire for deeper storytelling and that people didn't know how to tell their story. So it's all well and good to put this marketing strategy out there, and tourism relies a lot on particularly wholesale tourism, destinational marketing. We're not looking to compete with that at all. We see that we can complement that with a really, truly authentic experience strategy. So yeah, that's where it began. And then we got a bit of a grant to go and have some conversations. So out we went into the region. We cover 17 local councils in this Far North Queensland region. So, and as you know, we have 2 traditional First Nation groups that live and work and operate here. So we have a very strong cultural representation from that group. But we saw that there was a key difference between what people call cultural tourism, and that the assumption is what I call the capital C cultural tourism, so Indigenous tourism. And it is huge here in Far North Queensland, and a lot of state government money is invested that way. But when we were having conversations, that's not what people were understanding was the small C cultural tourism, which is the food we eat, the coffee we drink, the cars we drive, the view we have out our window, and on it goes. So we were working with, as I said, Wet Tropic Management Authority around how to enrich their tour guide stories. And they're very scripted and they're very aligned with key messages. So how do you free that up and allow more pop-up experiences to happen? And we could see that that wasn't possible with wholesale tourism. It has to be in a brochure, it's packaged, it's got to be reliable, it's got to come out every day of the year as close to the same thing as it can be. So authentic is a little bit more unreliable than that sometimes. And certainly our businesses, the micro businesses that we're working with, are not what they would call product ready or, brochure ready. They have an idea or a dream, or they have a land care group that just needs a little bit of income. So a tree planting day would be a perfect example where they've got volunteers that come week after week after week, but every now and again an injection from, say, what we call a green nomad, and we have the website Green Nomad yet to be enacted, but what a beautiful concept. And then you put that with the creative. So on the way you might trail and find yourself at a beautiful home-based studio. Here, this beautiful bee I made came from a home-based studio here in the Tablelands. I also got to make a beautiful ring in New Zealand once, the same. So that's where we hit on the definition of authentic being much more by chance and real, and get the stories are from the local people telling them themselves.
Well, you gave us some great examples then of good authentic tourism projects. So why do you think authenticity is important to tourism?
Well, in our research, so this strategy, this project went over nearly 2 years, and we just pre-COVID were about to launch it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So we've had to hold off, and it's been actually in so many ways a blessing, because now we can actually rethink what it is. But the idea that certainly with the locals telling their stories, but how do you get really immersed? And as Cherie said before, cultural tourists will stay longer, they'll come back, they'll go way off a known track, they will hang out in your town for an extra few days if that particular experience hasn't started yet. And these intrepid travellers are not what you think. You can't track them either. Up here we have this huge, I know everyone knows about the grey nomads, but they're en masse here. They come here for what they call Christmas in July, and they are right across the Cape in the same month at the same time. So we see them and we get to talk to them, and they are not what you imagine. They are your everyday person, your family groups that have had the other experiences. They don't want to buy something in advance off a brochure that's ticketed. They'd much rather come by something by chance, word of mouth, down the road. Somebody says, oh, this old uncle tells a story on Friday. If you're there at 6 o'clock at the local pub, he'll show you the back streets. That's that kind of pop-up experience that we started to see through some of the online portals like Airbnb, but we didn't see any examples, and we realized there's a gap in development of product, and tourism, as I said before, wants product ready. It's already developed, it's already got the brochure, it's ready to go, and it's reliable. So how to build that capacity has been our next challenge, and also to support the quality assurance, but also the risk assessment that could be done in some of these more informal spaces. Did that answer your question? Sorry, Michelle.
That's fine. Look at the I mean, I love to travel and I love to go to new places and experience new places, and you find you learn more from those local champions and those cultural champions. And that's such an organic thing. It's not something, you're right, it's not something that can be scripted. It's not something, you can't go, right, Bob, you're standing here on the corner and you'll talk to everybody that comes through town. It's, and then it's how people actually engage, and everyone needs to engage in a different way. So it is such a hard thing to pin down as such, but it is so important. Now, you were you going to share some images with us?
I was, but I've kind of gone past them a bit, but if you give me a moment, hang on, I will just line that up. But yeah, I think that's the thing about the authentic experience, that I had an example given to me by someone about, this is years ago, one of those examples you have no idea where it came from, but it changed my life. This guy had dreamed his whole life of going to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, and this was the day. He arrived in Paris, he had one day, he was going to the Eiffel Tower, his whole life. He walks along that beautiful park with the lovely, and he takes his time, you can see it in the distance, and came across the ice cream, and he went, got to have ice cream in Paris, right? Going to the Eiffel Tower. Gets chatting to the ice cream guy, and they get on so well, he invites him home from lunch. He doesn't get to go back, and actually he never did climb the Eiffel Tower, but his lifelong memories come from that absolute personal connection, meeting the family. He still felt like he saw the Eiffel Tower, but he didn't have to climb it with the thousands. And so I think that encapsulates it. So when we discussed what we felt were the key themes in authentic experiences, what people were looking for, no doubt First Nation is number one, but not necessarily the tourist version of First Nation. And so that authentic connection with people Indigenous to that country, that is definitely a cultural tourist aspect, no matter where in the world you are. The products, which is also the experience, people definitely want to take something home, that experiential purchasing. I know that museums and galleries have worked it all out, exit through the shop type thing, but actually to buy something that you have crafted yourself, sitting beside the artist, or even gone and got the elements and put it together. That is so special. Nature-based, there is definitely, and certainly up here in Far North Queensland, but I think that's everywhere now, and COVID definitely has brought that about, that we are far more appreciative of the environment and the world that we live in. The events, and thanks Scott for I'm now very excited. I've wanted to go to parks my whole life, I have to tell you, but don't know why. I've never even liked Elvis, but I can just imagine it being amongst 1,000 Elvises. So events, I worked with 85 festivals across Far North Queensland for close to 5 years with a project called FestLinks. And I worked in and on the events, and I could see that the smallest one out at Dimboola there, the little Rotary Festival, 500 people, they just kept parading around the centre until the kids got tired, basically, because it's such a small village. But they created the most amazing food festival there. I've never had the amount of food there in my life. Arts, no doubt, is key, but food and farm, that farm to plate is now key as well. So we went on from that to then thinking about the examples. So as I said before, the tree planting, but bird watching, oh, it's huge. But that's not enough. You know, it is about the food they eat while they're bird watching. And it is about the other engagement with the host of the family or the place. There's bird watching on the Torres Strait, one tiny little hilltop that one lady lives on, and she shares her small house with bird watchers from all around the world, so they can watch this one tiny little bird that's smaller than your hand that has flown from Russia to I don't know, Tasmania or south even further. I don't know how it does it. So that is the kind of authentic experience people are looking for. Turtle hatchings, animal observations, all of those things, and people will pay for that experience. There's me. I'm not leading the parade. I happen to have got caught in front of the Cairns Festival ukulele section, but the difference of volunteering on an event or working on it behind scenes or coming early, a couple of weeks early to something like Laura Dance Festival and actually helping to set it up, you can't pay for. That is not an experience you buy in a ticket. And so I think the home-based studios and masterclasses, I'll give you an example of one of those in a moment here. This one, Love Green Photography. Colin Huber, he takes you through a walk through the botanical gardens with your camera in hand. And he teaches you how to do macro photography with the botanical garden in front of you as your playground. How amazing is that? That's authentic. Then we have Kettle Black Pottery. Any day of the week, school holidays, any age, you can do some sort of pottery workshop there and take something home with you or post it in advance. Tree planting, as I said as well. So these are the kind of experiences that I think people are desperate for, and they're going to want to do it more and more now. Oh, here's some of our beautiful examples of people that have signed up already. We've been at some events already as well. And these are all people with some sort of idea or dream that they would like to share with people.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a lot going on up there. We were lucky enough to go to Cairns and Tableland earlier this year, and yeah, it's a magical place. So, but hats off to you. You're obviously very passionate, and it reflects in what you're putting out and the people that you're attracting to what you're doing as well. So thanks, Melissa, for coming along tonight.
No worries.
So now we're going to cross back over to Bron down on Tambourine Mountain, and she can take it from there.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Melissa. I'm jealous. You're sitting there in tropical Cairns with short sleeves, and we're sitting on this stage freezing on Tambourine Mountain. That's authentic. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered today, which is the elders past, present, and emerging from the Wandjirra community and all those of the Yugambeh language group. With me here on stage is Rory O'Connor from the Yugambeh Museum and Susan Rallings from the Making Good Alliance. And I'd like to start first by asking a few questions of Rory. Jingri, Rory, did I get that right?
Got it perfect. Perfect.
Fantastic.
You know our language, yeah.
Very good. We sure know your language. living here on Yugambeh country. But tell me, what does cultural tourism mean to you?
Well, before I go any further, Aunty Gerry, beautiful welcome. And I was wrestling with the door to get in to make eye contact with you. And you made a point. We are still working on Stephen, your brother, who's a fantastic story to get him here. We did get another brother here, and we're very proud for that too. But I think actually Aunty Gerry hit it on the head. It's storytelling, and what I see with Indigenous cultural tourism around Australia is it's over-promoted and it's under-delivered. So you go through the websites for Australia and they show these fantastic classic images of Aboriginal people with didgeridoos on desert country, and I don't think a lot of the experiences had by international tourists actually match up what they're promised in this space. And the reason I'm a raging advocate for Indigenous cultural tourism is I think when you hear the stories from the people of this country, and I'm lucky, I grew up in Aboriginal families here, and from a young age I became the tribe scribe. I was a journalist, so my mother, who's 92, born in Beaudesert Hospital. She was probably the first person in her lineage to be born in a hospital. Everyone else was born in the bush. And she, actually, you mentioned Coralbin, just outside Coralbin's little place called Clune. She grew up in early years in a tent there. But I got to meet all the locals and all her rallies and all my rallies, the Mununjali people and then the Gold Coast people. The stories they tell are fascinating. And we went back there to organic tourism and pop-up stuff. That's what people find fascinating, is hearing real stories from real people about, actually, you know, Round Mountain, that thing fell out of the sky. How do we know that? Oh, I'll tell you the story. When you're looking at a place and there's someone with a local connection to it, you can't beat that. And it's that immersive feeling of also having a connection to it. You mentioned volunteers before, and I think if you can make people feel they are part of you telling the story, they are actually getting something out of it. So I think cultural tourism is about storytelling, connecting people with real people who have real stories about the landscape, which is where Indigenous tourism really has an advantage because our stories are of this land here. Mount Tambourine he's a warrior god, and the Coomera River princesses, well, he was in love with them, and then the Canungra princesses, well, they were just bad news, so he didn't go out with them. But when you're actually looking at Canungra Creek, and you can realise that's a princess, man, like, you know, this goes back 20,000 years, these stories have been wandering around. Our role is to empower our youth to tell them. It's a long process, it's a long journey we're on. But if we can get the next generation comfortable and powerful in their stories, hey, like the Page brothers, they go out and they tell the stories. But they could do that because they were confident in their own self, their own stories. And that's what I look to every day to say, how do we get the kids from this region, you know, powerful and telling Aboriginal stories?
I was going to say, I mean, how do you, I think that the pop-up and yet the 24/7 product that you can put in a brochure, there's a tension there, isn't there? And how, especially when we're talking about Aboriginal stories, who has the right to tell that stories? How do you access that? Are we ready to hear those stories? You know, how do you get over that?
I think as a young boy, I'd look at the Gold Coast, and the tourism market there used to be $1 billion. And I remember thinking, wow, if we could get 0.005% of it, that would be so many, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, now if I look at the market of Brisbane and the Gold Coast combined, and they're two markets with international airports, and they're both just over 60 minutes drive away, whichever way you look at it, you're looking at a $13 billion market. Now, you've also had major theme parks, and before the tragedy, Dreamworld's first product in Australia of an Aboriginal offering, Indigenous offering, in a major theme park was going gangbusters. And nothing can help the tragedy and COVID. But I look now to what a lot of the people who were doing very well at Dreamworld, they're the boys and girls from here, you know, and they were given pride from the communities here. So I think this place is really well placed to, and someone said before, be on the back end of when we pop out of COVID, people are going to, Scott McDuff was saying, you know, we really need to be looking at what happens in that space. And that's what I'm excited about, because I know 15 years ago we did a thing called the Drumley Walk, and it was meant to be a one-off. The stories that came out from community were overwhelming. The people would travel up from Victoria to do this crazy walk through the rainforest. It was not particularly professionally organised. It was well supported by locals and the local council, this lady here and many others, but it was run on passion and stories. But if you could take that, professionalise it, market it, I think within those, within the passion and the stories of this area, you're building a product for the next generation to stand up to and commercialise and monetize. And I don't say that with any shame, because unless they can do that in a way that's sustainable, they don't have an industry, and that's a problem with Indigenous tourism. 2014, we did a study of Southeast Queensland Indigenous tourism products. The problem was most of them are mum and dad, very small operators. So when someone gets sick, that product is no longer. And also the local families, not Indigenous, don't know local Aboriginal stories. So you're trying to sell them stuff they don't know about, which is why we push language and stories all the time. So locals will go, what is that story of Tamborine Mountain? Where can I take my visiting friends and relatives, which make up 34% of the market or whatever? Where can I take them to hear the story of Tamborine Mountain? Because that's a good yarn. And that's the kind of things that are on my wish list, I guess, as we go forward.
So what projects are you aware of that are significant tourism initiatives for Indigenous communities, and why are they? What are good examples? Look,
it's hard to find successful examples anywhere around the world. You know, we used to look at the Polynesian and cultural space because that was an example, but that's, from what I can gather, it's based on a cultural and a religious organisation which uses labour to produce a product which makes it commercial. You look to Jabberkai to the north, which has long been run a long time, but again, a lot of those organisations, they really rely on training or other sources of income rather than a purely commercial product, which is why the Dreamworld product was attractive to me, because people were paying regular money to go into a place and then they were getting indigenified with these stories. Hey, I did not know that. Wow, there's something fun there. And I think the market has changed, but I think unless we are looking to have a commercial product from the get-go, we'll fall into the trap of having something that's really a training space, whereas really I think the stories are marketed the right way. And look at Bangarra, you know, these people work really hard, and they, you know, it's hard work for them too. But I think we need to be looking at making it commercial in its own right, without selling out the story, and creating opportunities for our young people as they come forward to do it. So, do I have good examples? It's really hard to find, and ones that I'd look at to model off, they're really hard to find.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because as we're talking, I'm thinking, you know, there's two ways of looking at that. Is success measured by bums on seats, the number of people, the number of income it's generated, or is it about being able to, is cultural tourism being able to ensure that cultural stories are kept alive and that for generations, and that YouTube and globalisation doesn't kill off a language, and therefore all the skills that are told through a language are killed off. So I guess whose success are we measuring it, you know, and we all need to eat.
Yep. So I've got to confess, I worked in tourism for many years, and I worked on the Ingham Australian Italian Festival, I think it was called, and I think that was 25 years ago when I was working for Tourism Queensland, where this lady also worked. But when I looked at events around Southeast Corner and here, I didn't really care if we made money. What I wanted was our young people to connect with the old people and to see that intergenerational passing on of stories and knowledge, and I won. You know, and that's what I wanted. If we didn't make $1, that didn't matter to me at all. And if someone could generate a tour out of the back of it, or do a food tour off the side of it, and they made money, that's great. But what people got out of coming together en masse over the course of 10 years, thousands of people walked beside each other, shared stories of country and old Aboriginal people and young Aboriginal people and old non-Aboriginal people and young non-Aboriginal people. I was in Canberra, and I'm talking to the Chief Whip last year, and I didn't know her from a bar of soap. She was the policy advisor to the Chief Whip. Anyway, I started talking, and I said, oh yeah, I'm from up Gold Coast, mate. She said, I know you. You gave a speech about Billy Drumley on this part of the walk, blah, 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 blah. And I looked at her, and I didn't realise the power of a story. And here I was with the Chief Whip in a Conservative government who knew all about us because of some story we'd told, you know, this community had told and shared, and you don't know where that ends up. Now, she'd probably come on the walk for $4 or $10, but to me, it's about empowering the next generation. And somewhere along the line, someone will go, right, I'll do a pop-up food market next time you do that walk thing, and I'll make a lots of. And people did make money from it, and that's what I want to see in the future. Does the actual core event need to make money? No, it creates the catalyst, a meeting place for all these people to come together and get their thoughts in order. So I think there is a future there. I think we've got to, you know, and the community attitudes changed, and now's the time to really be thinking, what can we do in this space?
So what do you reckon, last words for you, Rory, what could we do better to encourage more engagement, more authentic storytelling and support for Indigenous tourism initiatives? What could we do, what should we be doing better?
I think creating opportunities for Indigenous people to tell stories, but also non-Indigenous people too, because storytelling about your own town is an art that you need to promote to everyone. Hearing Aunty Gerry there and just encouraging her to share a story is a wonderful thing, because it's, and remember creating an opportunity for Aboriginal people to get up and play. A lot of these people played when they were younger, but to give them an audience where they can play when they're older, that's unique. And that's what I think. And I think you do, you know, you guys work really hard at Seeing a Room, and that's a shout out for you. You do amazing work, and I'm really proud to work with you in the past and in the future, because creating opportunities for these people to tell their stories, and even not, you know, also non-Indigenous stories, because be proud of where we live. You know, we all stand on the shoulders of our elders, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. What were they going through 50, 100 years ago? Tell me the story about that place, about that hall and what went on through it. Because then you've got people who are proud of their town in 5 years, 10 years when they're 80, and then you've got a strong community.
And a strong culture. Thanks, Rory. That's fantastic. With me also, thank you, is Susan Rallings of the Making Good Alliance. Welcome, Susan. You've been sitting there in the cold. I'm sorry about that. We should have been doing sort of some cultural dancing or something.
We should be in Cairns.
Yeah, we should be in Cairns. That's right, exactly. Susan, you were Regional Director for Tourism Queensland for the UK and for Europe. Not a little job. Can you tell us what experiences were most sought after for the cultural tourist coming to Queensland? What were they looking for?
Thank you, Bronwyn, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Look, I think really one of the things that surprised me, having been in business for a long time and then going into working with Tourism Queensland in UK and Europe, was understanding the broad cross-section of the tourists that came to Queensland, and that the requirements and the interests they had were so diverse. So when we think about what cultural tourism for them is, it's about an Australian experience. So it's something that is unique Australian. They don't really think about borders. So when we get very excited about whether we're in Queensland or Scenic Rim or, you know, New South Wales or whatever, they don't think about that. They think about the Australian experience. They think about our wildlife. They think about our nature. They think about arts and culture in a very different way, because many of them are embedded in those sorts of things. So they want to see what is real and what are the things that the locals do. So I think it's a really different experience for them. You know, if you think about the way the Brits or the Europeans think of Australia, is that we have this sort of outdoors, fun lifestyle that, you know, we just seem to have every opportunity to be out. The weather's fabulous, the beaches are fabulous, we've got great bushwalking, all of those sorts of things. Well, when they think and talk about their culture, they talk about being inside, being in, you know, museums and art galleries and pubs. You know, that's their sort of cultural piece. So for us as tourists going there, we love to immerse ourselves in that. So when they come to Australia, it's really about giving them something that an Australian would do for their friends and family.
So that's that connection to place, but live like an Australian.
Absolutely.
Ah, that's interesting. That's interesting. So do you think we are offering those experiences? I mean, or are we offering sort of an artificial idea of Australia? Do we know what Australians are? And with the fires and floods and COVIDs, how do you reckon people are seeing Australia now? Are they seeing us in the same light? I mean, they've heard some pretty bad stories after the bushfires. You know, are we delivering?
Great question. I think different people's perceptions are being amplified. And I think, you know, we only have to look at what happened after the bushfires. You know, people thought the whole of Australia was on fire. if you looked at what was going on at the Scenic Rim, and we'll certainly hear from Jonathan, you know, about the devastation that we saw at Binnaburra, people thought the whole of Tamborine Mountain, the whole of the Scenic Rim was burning. And, you know, you didn't even have to be an overseas visitor. You only had to be somebody outside of the state. And I think that's really important. They look at that and they go, oh my goodness, everybody in Queensland is suffering from that. So whilst we wanted them to recognise, you know, some of the difficulties that we're going through, what it did do is close down our economy. So if you think about how many people really got hurt, didn't matter what sort of business you were in, but certainly tourists felt they didn't want to come here. They didn't want to be prying. They didn't want to be being seen to be looking at people in pain. And we saw that right across the country. I mean, it's been really difficult. And we've seen that with the floods. And now, of course, we've seen it with COVID. You know, many people in our region have been dislocated from their incomes, their families, all of those things through these multiple events that continue. And look, you know, unfortunately, I think this is something that we're going to see more and more of. We're going to have to really think about how do we position ourselves for whatever the future brings to us. So, you know, as we've talked about tonight, I think cultural tourism is about being an authentic experience. It's about understanding Australians and who we are. And I think you're absolutely right, Bronwyn. I'm not sure that we do know who we are. And I think, you know, as Rory and I have laughed about, you know, if you think back 25 years about the sort of image that we portrayed to the world about Australia, it was, you know, throw another shrimp on the barbie. We've seen some pretty shocking ads in tourism. And you think, is that the culture that we want people to think about? You know, if you look at the advertisements and the advertising and things that we've done for New Zealand, I mean, it's very much, you know, the nature-based, you know, come and see our culture. We're very proud Maori people. This is what we stand for. You know, Australia hasn't got to that level, I think, in terms of sophistication about who we are. We don't celebrate the things that we have. We don't celebrate our Indigenous heritage. We don't talk about all the other experiences that you can have coming to Australia. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think locally, as Rory mentioned, and I think as we've heard from everyone else tonight, there are ways that we can give an authentic experience to every single person that comes to our community. Whether it is understanding the history, the architecture, the art, you know, the scenery, just being really proud of the place you live and being able to tell those stories. I just think there's great opportunities for us in being able to do those things. And I think maybe it's incumbent upon each of us to learn to tell one story about our location in which we live and be proud of that.
I think it's really interesting because I don't think we know much about our places. Then, you know, when we move in a city, you know, what was underneath that city, who built the city, who governed the city, that creates the people that we are. And so I don't know that we know those things. Often you don't know your ancestors. And I think Indigenous cultures, with an exception, a lot of other cultures are much better than Western white Australians are not very good at that stuff. So that's really interesting. So that's about knowing stories. How can artists, poets, musicians, makers, performers, historians, actors, storytellers, etc., tap into the cultural tourism market? How could they, if they go, oh yeah, I think I could tell a story, how can they make the most out of the cultural tourism market?
Great question. I think every single person has a story to tell. So I think it's identifying with what's important to them. So whether you are an artist, being able to speak about your art, you know, what is it? Because for many people, and, you know, I'm an art lover, but certainly don't have any creativity, I just love to hear the story about how things are made. So it means so much more to me to be able to meet the artists and hear about the journey and see whatever it is that's produced. I think we've all had those experiences where we've gone and purchased something. We've gone to an art gallery, or we've gone to a market, or we've gone somewhere and we've seen something. And, you know, I think we heard Cherie talking about that in terms of Cambodia. You know, it's very hard as a tourist or even, you know, somebody who's visiting a location to understand what's authentically from that place and what is something that is badged from that place. So I think the opportunity for people to be able to tell their story about the work, so whether it is poetry, whether it's an author, whether it's a dancer, whoever it might be that is actually sharing their work, being able to tell their story about how they got there. And for those of us who are not trained in those areas, it gives us a pathway in. It helps us understand. So I think arts and the broader arts are really important because it can tell stories that perhaps we couldn't actually have a conversation about. Those things that are really tough and challenging and that might confront us and that might make us feel uncomfortable can all be done through the lens of the arts. I think it can help weave those things, challenge us without making us too uncomfortable, but give us the opportunity to start questioning and be curious. Perhaps that's a way that the creative types can really, you know, bring cultural tourism to themselves.
Bronwyn, can I just add something too? Don't be scared if you're an artist or a maker or a creator to look where the market, where people already are, and then work in collaboration to tell your stories. If you're selling hot dogs, you want to stand in a mall where lots of people are. If you've got a great story about the place and there's a local market or a place that's already got an audience, don't be scared to put yourself out there. And I think I had the privilege of being with David Groom in his studio just recently, and he's telling, now I'm painting about the fires. It was priceless, you know, to see this passion ooze out of this person. Of course, we bought things, but you know, that's a drive up a mountain to get there. I encourage anyone else to find a place that's already got work with other organisations, collaborate, so that you can take your story to a bigger audience than you normally would.
I think the other side of that is the artist or the performer can learn how to tell their story and feel validated by their story, but the non-arts sector, the business sector, could do well to connect the artists and be open to the artists so that they can add to their wine. They can add to their menu, they can add to their shop or their footpath or wherever, or the writers that are out there who could be writing copy for their stories and things.
And Cherie made that point about Cambodia, you know, trying to sell accommodation. Tell your story through the places that were there, right? And that was the same if we can get accommodation houses here, if we can have places that tell Indigenous stories. What's that mean to a guest when they turn up to a place in Beaudesert? This restaurant tells a bit of an Aboriginal story. You've got something that differentiates you from someone else.
Absolutely. And I think when people come to visit, they want a unique experience. They want something that when they walk away, they can say, I went to visit the Scenic and I had, you know, fabulous cheese and great wine, and I went for a bushwalk, and I just happened upon such and such, which was, you know, this great art space, and I saw art that I never expected. You know, isn't that the authenticity that we're talking about tonight? And isn't that the stuff that really people walk away and go, wow, wasn't that fabulous? That was far more than I ever expected. So, you know, I think that's the way that we could think about cultural tourism.
So after a career in tourism, business and finance, you've just embarked on a new project with the Making Good Alliance. How do you see this supporting the arts and cultural tourism on Tamborine Mountain, seeing as we're talking about art spaces?
Thanks, Bronwyn. I guess all of the conversation that we've had tonight probably fits into what we're doing at Making Good Alliance. I guess having worked in corporate, and as I said, I'm certainly not a creativity or have any creativity. I'm certainly not a creative person. I don't have any creativity. But I really love the notion of being able to view the world through an arts lens. I love the arts. I love good food. Everyone who knows you will tell you I love good wine. You know, there's all of those things that I think make a region. And I think, you know, we're so privileged to live at Tamborine Mountain, and I've been a long-term resident here. And Mark and I, my husband and I, decided a couple of years ago that we would like to leave a legacy to the mountain. And it was something that our community could engage with, enjoy, put their own stamp on and build. And I think, you know, it's this notion, as you mentioned, Bronwyn, that business has got a very clear mandate about what they want to do, and traditionally it's been all about creating a profit. And the arts has had this vision about what we would like to do is create things that challenge, confront, look beautiful, whatever their purpose is, often goes in a different path. What we'd like to do is bring the two together. So what we've done is bought the block of land right next door to the Mununjali, where we sit tonight. And it's a notion about building a community. It's about bringing together that whole notion about to bring up a child, you need a village. We believe that to build a really vibrant community, you need to bring different viewpoints, diverse people, diverse thinking, together. And we believe that we can do that through the arts, through a community creativity hub. And when I'm talking about arts, I'm talking it in the broader sense. So everything from dance to writing and everything in between. So performance arts, visual arts, all of those sorts of things. But how do we bring the community together? And we've got such a vibrant and dynamic community here, with all sorts of artists, from hobby artists to professional artists and everything in between. But what if we could spark interest for younger people who are here? What if we could bring those people who are hobby artists who would like to go into a professional arts environment? What if we could challenge them and help them and mentor them and inspire them to do something differently? And how do we enhance and add to the vibrancy that we already have on Tamborine Mountain? But we also recognise that people won't just come for the arts. We think when you come to Tamborine Mountain, you come for a full experience. You want the food, you want the scenery, you want the people, you want the stories. So it's about making that place available. So that's our vision for what we're doing at Making Good Alliance. I guess there's three main things, as I said: the Community Creativity Hub, a residency program, which is about bringing people together who can create together, who can work together to identify opportunities, who can talk about some of the social challenges we have, who can talk about how arts helps in terms of well-being, how it helps us in terms of thinking about connection, collaboration, cohesion and community. And then the third part is really giving people an experience. So they get the opportunity to learn. So they might learn from the artist, they might engage in a workshop, they might learn more about the whole regenerative sort of processes. And we're calling our centre the Centre for Regenerative Arts. So that notion of going beyond sustainability. So having a business model and a business, and I say that, you know, really clearly, that it will be a business, it will be about creating a profit to enable us to do the work to meet the purpose. And so this is a real passion project for us, and it's about delivering on purpose to support our community that has been so good to us.
That's beautiful. I wish you very well about that. And if people wanted to find out more or get in contact with you, they could go to the makinggoodalliance.com.au, is that correct?
That's it.
And find out a little bit more and get in contact with Susan and Mark to find out a bit more about that. Thanks, Susan, and I'm sure we'll have a few more conversations about that later on. But right now we might go over to Beechmont and see if Jonathan Fisher is with us. Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Good. Is it as cold up in Beechmont as it is on Tamborine Mountain? It's probably colder.
Look, we've had the fire going here since about March, so I'm not putting it out. And I mean the one that's inside contained, not those horrible bushfires.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good segue, Jonathan. As former CEO of National Trust Queensland, where do you start when an iconic heritage site like Binnaburra is burnt down? And what is the impact on Queensland and our Australian tourism industry from the loss of such a cultural asset?
Look, I should point out just straight away that I've only been in this post since the beginning of June. So where did Binnaburra start? It started with a damn good chairman and a team who was on the site. In fact, our chairman flew back the very night that the fires were approaching Beachmont and Binnaburra from Indonesia, and was on the site for, well, ever since. And, you know, he and the team were greatly supported by state government. There was a recovery task force that was put in place, very high level from the very beginning. Many of you would have seen this, would have seen the media where every politician from the Premier down came and visited Binnaburra and expressed their support. And there was a very careful plan which has been focused on recovery through what has been a very difficult year for everybody, but particularly for those people affected by the bushfires. So just so people know, one of the biggest impacts, quite apart from the terrible loss of the Heritage Lodge 42 cabins, was the destruction of the very single access road up to the Binnaburra section of the national park. So that's been hampering any thought of recovery. So we've been focusing very much on a relationship with state government, with Transport and Main Roads, with an amazing team of abseilers and very skilled people that have been putting together the rebuilding of the road. And it's only been in the last 3 or 4 months that we've been able to get into looking at what we could do to refurbish what's left of the site up here. And there's a lot. There's still the campgrounds. There's still the original Groom's Cottage, thankfully, what will now be the heritage hub of Binnaburra. There's the Sky Lodges, there's the tea house, but we haven't been able to, until very recently, get up with heavy machinery to look at the sad clearing, the demolition of the site. But we've been working very much to a plan. So I think that's how do you start? You have a good team that is very skilled in communication. We were very lucky to have Steve on board and the amazing people that were retained. And since I've been here, we've been working on a road plan very much towards reopening to the public, which we hope is going to be in early September this year.
Fantastic. I'll look forward to being there. I was up there yesterday, actually, and I could see that the road was still closed. But it's quite lovely to see the bush is regenerating, and it's starting to look really quite beautiful, very different from a couple of months ago. But I'm you know, so much of our country has been burnt, and I travelled through 3 different states in January and saw the devastation and the fires all across Australia. And I'm just wondering, when there is such a horrendous season, how can we reshape our culture and retell our stories anew? You know, if we're talking about Gondwana rainforests and the beauty of going bushwalking, and then we're looking at burnt rainforests, or if we're talking about places in Victoria or South Australia, how do we tell different stories post-fire?
I'm not sure it's about telling different stories. It's about telling the story. And people were very surprised really quite soon after the bushfire how quickly nature started to recover. There is still huge evidence of burnt tree trunks as you go along up towards Binnaburra, but obviously we had very heavy rain in January, and we have had again since. So you know, nature will tend to look after itself, and it's wonderful that especially with the enforced rest, I suppose, from COVID-19 shutting down the world and slowing people down, then nature has had a welcome break probably, and the wildlife is certainly returning to Binnaburra. How do we tell the story? Well, there are a series of initiatives that we're working on. Our own team are very diligently recording almost everything that's been going on since the fires, to making sure that we've got a current archive of the different changes, the impacts of the bushfire, So there's a very strong photographic record that's been kept that will feature in an exhibition, a photographic exhibition, which will talk about the bushfire region, the bushfire season as a whole across Australia. It'll talk about specifically about what happened in the Scenic Rim and focusing in on Canunga up to the Beachmont, to Binnabar itself. And it will include some messages about what to be prepared for as you go forward. You know, we hope that such a devastating fire won't happen for some time to come, but you know, it will happen again at some point somewhere. So, you know, we are recording everything that's going on. And then we're reaching out to the community. There are many initiatives out there funded from different agencies. I'll maybe talk about that a little bit more later on in the conversation, but there are many opportunities for people to tell their stories, tell them what's been going on, whether it be the written word, whether it be visual, or whether it will be performance art. And there's a number of events that are in planning going into 2021, and I hope with some success and some future regional arts funding that we will establish a positive storytelling festival over the next 3 or 4 years up here.
Fantastic. I'd be that photographic exhibition. Have you got plans for that? Are you touring that, or what do you see? How do you see that?
At this stage, if you go to our website, and this is not a plug, it's just simply for information. If you go to the news section, the blog section, then the team have been posting regularly about what's going on in progress. If you go to the Binnabar kitchen in the old school site at Beachmont, there's a gallery, if you like, of photographs of pre-fire and post-fire in there, which are really quite moving. The photographs that will appear in one of the few remaining heritage buildings, the barn, will be there probably for the first 3-4 months, and then we hope, yes, they will be placed sensitively in other events. There is some funding for a Gondwana festival that we actually thought would have been happening many months ago. We thought the road initially would have been open 3 or 4 months after the fire, and then it was delayed and it was delayed. But this Gondwana festival is likely now to be sometime after the pop opera at Hazelwood that was talked about earlier. And it will be across various locations, not confirmed yet, but Binnabar will be one of them. I'm sure Beachmont itself, even into Canunga. There is some further funding that we understand is coming our way to connect the stories across from Binnabar to O'Reilly's across to Mount Barney. And we're excited about this bushfire event has created opportunity for people to get some funding, to tell their story, to show their art. And certainly this COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in has meant that through no choice of our own, we've all been forced to, slow down and, well, I don't know about slowing down, but we've certainly been able to spend more time at home and reflect, I suspect. And I hope out of that, we will encourage more people to find ways to express themselves and come forward in future festivals, future events.
I think having spent some time with some of my favourite people on Beachmont, it's one of my favourite places, and it is open for business. And you are headquartered in the old school, or what they call the headmaster's cottage. Is that correct? Headmasters?
Yeah, it's the old headmaster's house, and we took over what was a cafe that was run by various volunteers and small business, and it was really generous of the community, the Beachmont Area Progress Association, the Scenic Rim Council, to give us a chance to open up initially for 6 months to give some employment to just a few of the people that otherwise would have lost their jobs completely after the fire. It's been a great place for us to bring Binnabar off the hill and down into the community itself. We're using that as a base. Going forward, the next thing for us is to restart our reconciliation action plan. I think that's important to better understand our sense of place. and integrate it with a new or a refreshed master plan. We had a master plan done in 2008, but of course that was constrained then by the wonderful heritage buildings that were there, and the heritage and the cabins that we thought they would be there for many generations to come. And probably in my former life, I would have been tying myself to those buildings and making sure that nobody would change them. But whereas now we have through the terrible fires a clear sight where we can imagine something really quite exciting that includes respect for the Indigenous people, what went before the settlement of Mount Robert as it is now, and to try and integrate some form of reconciliation action plan with the future of this site, so we enhance its sense of place. So there's lots of opportunities, and a lot of that, yes, is being done from the old school site until we can get back onto Binnabar itself.
So people can come along to the old school site and have a coffee and drive up. Beachmont's open for business, and that's open a couple of days a week, is it?
No, we're open 5 days a week. It was important to work with the Flying Bean Cafe to make sure that there is a cafe open actually every day of the week here on Beachmont. For a long time, people have come up here, and it's been a bit hit and miss. And we thought if we needed to work with other businesses up here, the Airbnbs, the other cafe, to make sure that if people took the trouble to drive up here, if they felt that, or if they misunderstood that Binnabar might actually be open already, that they had somewhere to go to and get a bit more information. So we're open. I think it's Friday through to the Tuesday, but if we're not open, then Flying Bean is, and you get this fantastic view. And right outside Flying Bean, many of you will know Rosin's Lookout. There's that wonderful sandstone sculpture, and I hope in years to come we will see more permanent sculptures be commissioned as a result of some of the funding that's out there. And I know there's artists like Jess Brown that's working on the murals that are inspired, if you like, are marking the events of the bushfire across the Scenic Rim. Scenic Rim Council, state government have both been very generous in grants that have been given to commission not just visual but also performance arts. And there's Jen Robertson, I know, online that's working on a fantastic original performance piece. So look, the future is full of creativity with a great sense of place, a great sense of the food of the region as well. We're very pleased that we've opened up a little Providores, or it's a posh name for a general store, I think, which is using exclusively the products from the Scenic Rim farm box. So we're making sure that the food that comes up to Beachmont is from the Scenic Rim. People are loving that. And my friend Janine Healy is online as well, and I think she's looking for Scenic Rim Arts Box. I think we've rather cheekily called it, to try and see if we can really focus on, when Binnabar reopens, that we inspire people to buy local pieces of art from all over the region. And if other attractions like O'Reilly's, like our friends at Mount Barney and like, can do the same, then we are really creating a sense of place, a sense of economic recovery in the area, which is coming post what has been quite a difficult year.
Yes, it certainly has been a difficult year. And I guess before we go to questions for the whole panel, just like to ask you one other thing is, if, this is such an amazing planet, and Beachmont in particular is a place that people come from all over the world to experience nature in such an amazing form. And you, in your role as CEO of the National Trust, what could we do better to value our cultural heritage? What could we all be doing?
Look, I mean, I think it's about, continually reminding ourselves that we are but custodians of the land that we're walking on at the moment, to respect what's gone before us. I'm really excited the fact that we have this opportunity to do a reconciliation action plan, to integrate that with our master plan. I think we need to recognise why a place is special. In the case of Binnabar, it's been recognised as a cultural landscape because it demonstrates this evolution of Queensland history from before the First World War, the starting of the national parks, and people finding nature and connecting with nature through the Great Depression, post the Second World War, up to what we have now, the very strong connection with particular people, pioneers of this area, through to that very spiritual connection people find from their very first experience, perhaps camping on the ground roughly, and then they get a bit more affluent and might find themselves in a safari tent, and then if they're doing really well, or feeling particularly romantic, they might find themselves in a sky lodge. So you can follow people on a journey that are coming into nature at various levels. It's accessible for everybody, and it's got that sort of special spirit. People always sort of remember, very nostalgically when they first came to Binabara, and it might be the views, it might be the sound, it might be the weather, it might be who they've met up there. Often it's those stories sitting around the fire after a long walk through the rainforest, where it's like the fishermen telling you how big a snake how big a fish they've caught in the bushfire walks. It's what have they seen, what have they climbed over, and there's this amazing shareholder group at Binabara that have been around since 1933. We call ourselves a for-profit company, but we're really quite proud that we've really not done very well in terms of for-profit. It's really been everything that's ever been made there has been put back into Binabara. I hope I do a little bit better so we can do a little bit more. But the culture is about custodianship. It's about respecting, it's about sense of place, it's about making sure the spirit is there. And if we've learned anything about COVID-19, it's about stopping, looking around, slowing down and valuing what you've got locally.
Well said. Well said. We might cross over to Michelle now. Thanks, Jonathan. Michelle, have you got any questions from the audience you'd like to put onto any of the panelists?
I haven't received any, so there's been lots of chat, but I haven't seen too many questions come through.
Well, I've got a couple of questions. So I guess feel free to jump in. I'm not sure who to direct it to, but maybe it's something for everybody. What do you think is our greatest cultural asset? Susan, you're to my right. How about you? What do you think?
Our people.
Our people. Rory?
Our people and the stories of the families here, and I'm talking the First Nations people, and I'm talking the families that have been here since, and then the way the shared heritage of that. And Jonathan just spoke, I thought, beautifully about that. The history of that place is an amazing yarn, and you can't help but be moved when anyone tells it. The history of Beaudesert, of this mountain, of Boona, they're just rich, and it's the people and the stories, I think.
What about you, Cherie? What do you think is our greatest cultural asset?
I think for me, I would definitely say the people, but I think that the people don't exist on their own, and as Rory said, it's the stories behind it. It's the knowledge, it's the understanding that you get from those people, and I've seen it in my own experiences working overseas, and even in Cape York with Indigenous communities. People come because they want to understand who you are and what you do as an individual, and they want to understand your day-to-day life, as boring as you think it is. And so I think it is the people that draws people back. I mean, location, scenery, all those kinds of things are definitely value add. But I think it's the people that is the biggest asset.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what about you, Melissa? What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. I've had the very recent opportunity of going to India and attending a couple of the writers' festivals, and I'm the site manager here in Cairns for the Tropical Writers' Festival. So I had a direct, very personal comparison to make. And that question you asked earlier, what is quintessentially Australian? And we struggle from our perspective to lock that down. But I'd have to say, yeah, as Cherie was pointing out, more than what you just people, but it's also your perspective, the way you see the world from exactly where you are. And when I sit on these international forums now with all these amazing Indian colleagues I've met, I hear the distinct difference between our point of reference, which has to be starting with First Nation. There's no doubt our very unique First Nation culture is so rich, and the sooner we get on board with, being so proud of that, I think the better we'll be as a country. But yeah, I think it's perspective as well that goes with those people and makes it unique to that place.
Okay, so the different perspectives that different people bring helps us to understand a place better. What about you, Scott? What do you think?
Look, I certainly do agree that the people of the region are very important. I not coming from Scenic Rim and looking from afar, I really believe that our location and the geographical assets, I think that's something that's important as well. And Rory talked about some of those stories, how these things have come about, and how where Mount Barney came from in those Dreamtime stories. I really think that that connection to the people and where they're from, I think that's very important.
I think that's true wherever you live, isn't it? That, you know, if you know why the street is called that, or why the mountain, or where the river came from, it helps you to understand something that goes back, you know, for eons to the creation of the planet, really. So that's really interesting. Jonathan, last word from you. What do you think is our greatest cultural asset?
Well, we've all talked about the people. I think I'd just emphasise this amazing place. I think the geology and the geography of this place inspires the people, and it sort of it moves you every time you drive into any part of the Scenic Rim, and there's wonderful mountain views. The weather that goes with it has shaped how people live, how they engage, how they disperse, and so on. So I think it's people in their place and how they are connected to that place that I think makes this our biggest cultural asset.
Not putting people in their place, however.
Yeah, I do that a lot, sorry.
Not at all. I can see that we've got a question that's just come in from Jenna. It's saying, it's a question for Scott, and it is something I can't read without my glasses.
What plans are there?
What plans are there for community engagement and employment for, isn't this terrible?
There must have been a quicker way.
There must have been a quicker way.
Well, I can read it. It's not too bad. So thanks, Jenna, for the question. Look, there's going to be many opportunities for community engagement at the Popper event. It's being a 2-day event. We're really encouraging, of course, as many visitors as possible, and on-site camping. So we're going to really be looking at building an event from when everybody arrives. So there's activities from that time all the way through to a marketplace, retail, food, art displays, VIP areas, not just what's happening on main stage, but also there will be some support offering on main stage, support artists, backstage crew. There's just so many opportunities. So we are building that event management plan, but certainly there is opportunities for all at that event.
That's fantastic. Well, I think that's about a wrap. I think we might pass over to Michelle now in Toowoomba to wind this up.
Thanks, Bron. So yes, this is the end of our series of 4 arts dinners online. We hope you enjoyed the series. I know we enjoyed being behind the scenes and bringing this to you. You can catch up on past recordings at liveatthecentre.com.au or on the Arts Front website. We'd also like to thank all the artists and speakers who have made this series possible. We'd like to thank the traditional Mununjali elders and their dancers. I personally would like to thank Bronwyn for all of her hard work behind the scenes and for pulling these dinners together. It couldn't have been done without her. Thank you also to Arts Queensland and the Regional Arts Services Network, Scenic Regional Council, and all the crew in cultural services, as well as all the crew behind the scenes at Arts Front. So thank you, Elliot and team, and to the event video systems. So stay creative, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
None your boots. See you soon.
Thank you.